And just a quick note, if you do have questions or anything pressing while the presentations are happening or before we move into the dialogue, you can also put them in the chat and we can come back to them then later on. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Zuri. That's great invitation to use that chat. To kind of add another dimension of engagement and speaking together. So yeah, welcome everybody. Yesterday I read a piece from this book, A Pilgrimage to the Tree of Life by Albert Steffen. And I said I'd bring another piece today, so I'm going to do that. Indeed, a change of habits will of itself bring about a refinement of the feelings. But nature requires more from one who would prove their love. Go through the park in the spring and look upon the trees, the chestnuts with great brown buds, tenderly folded like little hands, the hazel bushes with their tassels, the elms with the yellow tufts of blossoms, the willows which seem to make a caressing gesture. All this requires many varied and delicate nuances of seeing and feeling. The soul must really transform herself for the sake of a meadow which puts forth its first bloom, must discover herself to the inmost core, must work with all her strength, for lo, here it gleams, and there it sparkles, and 100 changing colors glow in subtle interplay. If only the soul had strength, or knew whence to draw love, without full measure of which there is weariness and dullness. I'm tempted just to keep reading his thought process is really quite something. And really asking this question of how do we transform ourselves so that we can have a kind of immediate relationship with the living world. But I'm not. We'll save it and do one more little passage tomorrow. Welcome. There's a few new friends here with us, and yesterday most people here introduced themselves. Just would invite those who weren't here to introduce themselves and where they're calling in from. And then if there's any kind of really strong questions or impressions from yesterday, we won't have time for everybody to share, but would invite a few of those, to come forwards. So, Delma, and Karen, why don't we start with you guys?
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks to Elizabeth Carney, who notified us of this group and sent the link. So hopefully we're not barging in the party here, but
Great. No, delightful,
delightful to see a lot of familiar friends and faces. And so, yeah, we're in California in the Santa Cruz area, and maybe Karen would like to say a word. Caught me off guard. I'm not sure what I'm speechless.
Well, I think since there are other people, I want to keep it short, but we have a 17-acre biodynamic farm in like Corlitos, and we have a little farm shop where we sell our dietary supplements and produce. Like, we grow over like 100 plus medicinal herbs, like anything like South African, South American, Eastern European, you name it. But like, and yeah, we're very happy to participate here. We had a bit of a rough day, like with some cattle problems, and yeah, the having really experiencing the animals as the soul level of the farm, and the astrality and the reflection of the farmer, and can be sometimes very hard. But nice to meet you all.
And nice to see you again.
Thanks, Karen.
Guys,
Sean, would you introduce yourself? Oh, you're on mute. You're muted.
Awesome, perfect, thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, happy to be here. Anthony actually I work with Anthony in the Farmer Foundation here, and so he's the one that provided the connection here to be part of the Open Pollinator session, which was amazing, and I'm excited to be here and kind of see what I can check out from tonight's conversation and tomorrow's. I currently work on an organic dairy farm in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region. And I've been working with Remembrance Farm and Nathaniel there as my biodynamic mentor through the program for the foundation year. But yeah, just excited to be part of it. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean. Jen Rose, is that?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the invitation, Dottie. Glad to be here. I'm Jen Silverman, and I'm just north of Santa Fe, New Mexico, south of Taos on the Rio Grande, on old Tewa land here. And we have a 4-acre farm, and I have an 18-year-old and 22-year-old, and I'm attempting to engage them in our farming, and they're excited about it, especially with this COVID year. They seem to see a lot more truth these days about what's important, and they're showing a lot of interest in working with us on the farm, which is really nice. I'm part of the Northern New Mexico prep making group with Melinda Bateman. Yeah, I'm just glad to be here and to talk about the next generation. It's definitely on my mind quite a bit, and I do a lot of work locally to expose our youth when I can to agriculture and food and farmers and producers. And that's the work I do. And we have a big vision to actually make our farm a destination farm, education farm, to bring youth onto our farm, to experience, if it's just good food or working or meet the animals. And so that's a vision that's becoming really crystal clear for us. So, and it'll help to keep our children around as well, because they're interested in that as well.
Thanks, Jen. Alex, you speak into the space for a minute.
Hi. This is Julian, also with me. We live in Florida, but we have different farming experience, but we're definitely here to make connections and engage with someone that has different experiences than us completely.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having this.
Glad you're here. And Alex Tuckman.
Yeah, hi there, everyone. I'm calling in on the road, but I am normally grounded in my Open Pollinator home there in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Floyd, Virginia, where I am the director of Spikenard Farm Honeybee Sanctuary, which is a nonprofit biodynamic farm that offers educational programs around biodynamic beekeeping and biodynamic agriculture and experiences for children and adults and interns and apprentices. And yeah, I've been there for 8 years now. It was founded by Günter Haug and his wife Vivian Struve Haug, and they just moved off of the farm this year. So we had a bit of a succession, transition, intergenerational working together, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that or sharing some of my story there with you all tomorrow. I'm just really grateful that this open pollinator session is happening and that we're all sharing this time together. Yeah, and I was really excited. I'm part of the agriculture section. I'm one of the co-leaders with Sherry Wildfeuer of the agriculture section, and so kind of building a bridge between the work of anthroposophical agriculture and anthroposophical youth has been a real joy for me in the last months, getting to work together with the great folks that are here. So just a lot of gratitude, and yeah, thanks. Looking forward to the call.
Alex. And Lacey, you didn't have a chance to introduce yourself yesterday.
I didn't, that's right. I came in late.
Daddy?
So my name is Glacy. I live and work at the Campbell School, not a farmer, but I am very interested in connecting. So that's why I'm here. That's it.
Thanks, Glacy. Welcome, Bob, who just joined us. We're just all introducing ourselves. I'm feeling the time moving quickly and want to make sure that Walter and Anthony have lots of space to speak and that we have time for a wholesome conversation. So maybe just if there's one or two impressions from yesterday or questions that came up that are really jumping out, let's hear those.
I was thinking maybe we should just hold them just because so we don't get too far off, and maybe they'll still be burning. I think also if we had time to loop back, Walter wanted to address some of those. Maybe
Cool.
we just move forward so we don't get too far.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. And would invite you then to use the chat, and if you have impressions or questions that you want to throw in the chat, to do that, write them in, and then we'll start to build them up that way. So yeah, back to you, Frank, to introduce Walter and Anthony.
Thank you. We'll just put it here. Yeah, thanks for flexibility. I know we're like opening up the earth and then trying to move too quick, but just do our best, and thanks for being flexible with us. Great, so I'm just going to introduce Anthony, and then Zuri will introduce Walter, and then they'll offer. So Anthony, just so grateful that he's here, representing a lot of different works from the sort of like the larger public aspects of what is, biodynamics and how to help people educate on that, down to, allowing the deeper aspects around with his work with Lisa Romero and Educare do around the elemental beings and these deeper inner questions. When we first put out the word on the open pollinators, and we had a very quick as we could get the invite out with overbalancing, he instantly responded back and was like, I want to be a part of this. What is going on? And I think we as organizers felt instantly acknowledged in our efforts, that, waving the flag and then having someone, fly on in and be like, here we are, let's roll. So glad that you brought your energy and will forces in here, and that we can continue bridging that these questions have been living for you, and you've been able to work towards these for a long time. So thank you.
It's an honor to welcome Walter Goldstein tonight. I've grown up knowing Walter for the past 20 plus years. I don't think there's anyone who knows more about corn, at least that I'm aware of. And Walter is really a visionary, I would say, and has a real wealth of knowledge about biodynamics, research, agriculture, and much more. And so I'm really excited to have the chance to also hear more myself and feel that it's vital the work Walter is doing. So with that, I will pass it over to you, Walter. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks. And I'm glad to be speaking to you all. And I know that all of you come from a different perspective, but you know, we all we all share one thing, and that's the context of the situation that we're in. And we're here brought together with the idea that there's a climate crisis, and there really is, and it's huge and it's threatening. But there are two other crises that are going on, and one of those other crises has to do with human health. And it's an unresolved crisis. It seems to be getting worse and more insidious. You can see it around obesity, illnesses, different kinds of the nervous system, degenerative diseases, not to mention the pandemic. So we have this blossoming of problems with health, human health. That's another crisis. And a third crisis, I would say, is one that maybe doesn't get as much attention these days with all the political turmoil and concern about the climate crisis and the pandemic, but it's really there, and it really concerns those of us who are attempting to do something with biodynamics, and that has to do with the degeneration of the life forces and the value, the nutritional value of what we grow. And so it has to do with the degeneration of also the water that we drink, the purity of the water. And I would say also with how the plants affect us when we eat them. Because as you all know, if you're a farmer, you grow often seed that you buy, and that seed has a history and it has an impact. And of course, these three crises that I've just talked about are all interconnected. There's no doubt that they're interconnected. Now, let's look a little bit more, because I want to do a little big picture here about why are we in the situation that we're in now with these three crises. And it has to do with a couple different things. One thing, it has to do with our development as human beings on this earth. We need these crises. I know it sounds awful, but we need these crises. We need these crises in order to be able to develop as human beings. We need to be able to take a stand. And I don't mean take a stand in an inflexible way, but we need to be able to develop capacities by standing against the problems that are buffeting us. And so when we think into the future, and you young people, you know, you think about that actually you're challenged not only by your individual destinies and what it is in you as an individual that you need to unfold, but also you're challenged by this context. You're challenged by these crises. And how in heck are we going to deal with them? And so I wanted to share with you a couple of looking out into the world. What kind of world is it that we live in? And we have to find a relationship to. I mean, here we are today, and we're being brought together by an electronic technology that really wasn't here 15 years ago. At least people certainly weren't using it. So what our world nowadays is being shaped by technologies. And hold on, there's somebody talking in the back. I'm just going to close the door. Hey, could you guys keep it down? Yeah, we get shaped by technologies, but we still have people talking loud in the next room. So anyway, it's shaped by technologies, as you all know, and you know they've had enormous impacts on us. I mean, not only that we're all here to get today, but what has the impact have been of nitrogen fertilizer? Think already back, you know, over 100 years ago, the impact of fungicides, the impact of herbicides, the impacts of genetically engineered. All these things, they have brought us something, whether it's cars or telephones or GMOs, they have brought us something, and they've been extremely, how would you say, they've been tempting. They've, in a way, they've offered us something that we didn't have before, more power or a new capacity that we otherwise wouldn't have had. And we live in a world with these technologies, and we have to be judicious about their use. And so we also live in a world where our farms are becoming kind of machine-like. We're sort of like mechanization of everything. So young farmers now, they really have to learn how to be mechanics. And you know, and if you're working in agriculture, but you're not working as a farmer, you'll find yourself having to deal with institutional machines. Whether you work for a university or you work for a company or you work even for yourself, you will have to deal with institutional machines. And these machines, these institutions, they perpetuate themselves. Yeah, they want to make money. They also want to have dominance. And your ethical decisions will be colored by relationships with these large institutions. Either you're a part of them and a cog in their machine, and it won't be so easy to make always to make the decisions that are right. You have to honor their trajectories, or you try to do somewhat like some of us like that are here, Beth and myself and Living Power. You stand a bit on the outside and you try to form something that's somewhat independent, but lives on the grace of community. So I'd like to talk with you about three that I have been working on, and share it with you with hopes it'll inspire you a little bit. It also has to do with technology, but a different kind of technology. And I'd like to talk with you about sort of the ground up kind of solutions that I have been pursuing. And the first thing I want to talk with you about is partnership breeding. And the second thing I want to talk with you about is learning to have a direct relationship to the life forces in the earth. Not just what you might read in the agriculture course, but your own personal relationship to life forces in the earth. And the third thing I want to talk about, and I probably won't have time to, is talking about relationships, forming new social relationships, new companies, new enterprises, and cooperate in a cooperative way. So first, partnership breeding. I've been involved, you know, hey, I've grown like, I think 44 crops of corn, you know, either here in Puerto Rico or Chile or whatever. And I've been involved in biodynamics since 1976 or something like that. And one of the things that is really important is that we develop a kind of a partnership relationship with things. But the plants that you would buy and the seeds that you would plant, they come out of universities or companies where a partnership isn't the issue. The issue is programming plants with the idea behind the whole thing that plants are genetic machinery. So right off the bat, the spiritual world is not in the picture for these people who do this work. But nevertheless, for generations and generations, people have been out there in the field and being fed by their plants in a certain way and worked with the plants, and they've come up with plants that you're growing. And before them, these plants were coming out of cultures. They were coming out of cultures where people had a very direct and personal relationship with their crops. So there's this history that's written into the plants that you grow. And that history is not normally regarded. And if you go back to the heirlooms and Seed Savers Exchange, you know, there's a culture of people who try to bring that forward, or Beth and so on. They try to bring forward that living culture associated with the plants. Well, we try to do that with corn. And what we regard corn as being a partner, a creative partner in the work, and the microbes that live inside the corn as well. And just to be real short about it, by this process, we opened up the gates for all sorts of creativity with corn. And it started doing things for us when we grew it under biodynamic conditions that were really tremendous. So we changed the quality of the corn changed to be much better nutritional value. All these mutations just started spontaneously appearing, and we were able to identify nitrogen fixing corn. A little punky organization out in the sticks have done what no one else has been able to attain. And that's for real. We have nitrogen fixing corn, and we have it in a form where we're beginning to commercialize it and bring it out because it yields just as well. It doesn't need fertilizer. In fact, it seems to do poorer when we fertilize it, and better if we don't. So that's the first thing, is this idea of partnership breeding, that the human being can form a relationship, a living relationship with plants, live together with them, pay attention to them, do the human part real well, and let them do the plant part real well. And their creativity then reflects itself in new things that change everything. Because the fact of the matter is that we're polluting the heck out of the earth, and we're spoiling our water with nitrogen fertilizer. And nitrogen fertilizer is a fairly cheap input from the standpoint of the farmer purchasing it, but it's very energy intensive, and the fertilization creates a greenhouse gas that is poisoning our atmosphere and giving us more global warming. So we really have the opportunity. You can see, you change your attitude, you change your approach, and suddenly a solution pops out for a widespread problem that we otherwise wouldn't be able to deal with. We're locked into a paradigm that doesn't find any solutions. So that's the first thing I wanted to bring to you. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the life of the earth. And you know, when I was, I think I was like 24, I went to Europe and I was studying biodynamic preparations in different places. And I started paying attention to the life of the earth. And I started noticing something was happening in November to the soil. It was becoming rejuvenated again. And I started paying attention to that for years, watching it and seeing what happened. And you know what I noticed? I noticed that when I tried to convert a farm to conventional, that from conventional to biodynamic, the soil was really dead. It'd been exploited. It was like solid, blocky, and so on. And if I would fertilize it in the fall, then in the spring it would be great and it would grow vegetables that tasted really good. But if I didn't fertilize it in the fall and tried to do it in the spring, it wouldn't work. The vegetables would taste awful. There'd be diseases. It didn't work. There was something about the rhythm of the earth, of working with the life forces in the earth, and that rhythm of regeneration in the fall of the earth that was really important. So what this ends up in is that I'm working now with people, including with Anthony. We're having we've been digging soils once a month, taking them out and asking people to meditate on the life in the soil and describe the form of the soil. So once a month, dig out 2 samples from a spot that you know you can control. Hopefully you're growing a heavy feeding crop there so you can really see when the soil gets depleted, what happens in the fall when it becomes enlivened again. And by doing that, tremendous things happen. You will find, if you meditate on the life of the earth as it goes through the growing season, you will see tremendous things happen in the life quality of that soil that are mysterious. And you will have those experiences. They will be something that you have earned. And that's what's so important about biodynamics now. It's no longer enough simply to be able to read the agriculture course and talk about it intellectually. We have to earn the content. And that means that we have to do the work. And so I think I think it was Frank was talking about, well, how, maybe it was Ariel, how do we learn to work into the living process? Well, this is what I'd like to work with you on. Once a month, there'll be a Zoom call. It's posted on, write to me or to Frank and say you want to participate. We'll send you the Zoom link and you can participate with us in digging. You can dig up your own soil and make your own observations, and we'll go around once a month on that. Let's see, I think I pretty well used up my time here. So I'm just going to talk with the social issues. I'm going to have to pass by this now to give Anthony time enough to deal with what he wants to do, but we are trying to form kind of associations and a company that's a perpetual trust in order to bring a new type of form for working without patenting seed.
Thank you, Walter. It's very humbling and inspiring to hear of your, so yeah, very ardent lifelong work and all of, yeah, what it's bringing out into the world. Not so easy to follow, sort of, I have my own little initiatives and perhaps someday they'll become something more than they are, but yeah, really just grateful to be here with you all in this virtual space, trying to reach across it and meet and be in conversation, which Walter, just speaking of how do we sense into this life quality of the earth, and especially with technology, as he was mentioning, we have a new task to really strengthen that capacity to somehow, I'm trying to be with you in this life sphere right now. And how is that? How are we actually here together is a question. How can we be here together? But I sense that we are here together. Maybe you do too. So yeah, I can give a brief little snippet of what I do and sort of how I came here, and yeah, just partially I want to talk about, Walter laid a great ground to this question of conversation is a big one for me. And we kind of started our session today with this, what are people's questions? How do we bring them into conversation and work with them creatively? And Walter works with the plants creatively, not as mechanisms or with dead intellectual thinking, but in conversation. And so just kind of, we're hopefully having a conversation right now, all of us together, and just, yeah, Stefan introduced it beautifully last night, sort of carrying this quality of conversation wherever we go. And it's really a challenge in today's world to really find a place to listen from and a true place to speak from. Walter was mentioning these really tightening, mechanizing forces. Frank read the Michael letter and the leading thought last night, just kind of carrying these as we move through this work together and live in this technological world. What is it to do that as true human beings as part of a living earth and a living cosmos? And I sense most of us are here, and hearing some questions from last night and through the rest of my work, people aren't just organic farmers, but they're interested in biodynamics because it helps them connect to that life activity in the world and in themselves. And it's, as Walter is saying, it's not an easy thing to do. It is something that is hard earned, especially in today's world. And yet, that's why we're all here, and we're all really hungry for that. We need that connection. We realize that we're not just physical beings, but that we are participating. We're not just things that bounce off of each other, but we're all connected, and we're all trying to work together. And yeah, I'll just give a little picture of how I got to where I am. I guess I'm still young. I feel like I'm in a little bit of a middle space. I'm certainly, yeah, probably 30 years. I don't know how old Walter is, but probably 30 years younger than Walter. So I still have a lot of life left, hopefully. We shall see, but a lot more work to hopefully bring. Yeah, I'm in my mid 30s and I've been farming for about 15 years. I grew up in suburban New Jersey and was very interested in technology. I was very interested in computers. My dad and my brothers work in IT, and that I went to school for computer science. I was going to be a programmer around the first internet.com era. And somehow I found my way out. And really, you know, sort of grace of God somehow was like, you're going to make a lot of money and you could even do it ethically with an open source company or something like that. I didn't know anything but computers. They were my comfort and yeah, my social life to a certain extent. But I also had a sort of moral impulse that I couldn't deny that I think was part of that. I was interested in knowing the world and contributing something to it, as I think everyone is to a certain extent. I was an anarchist punk. I was, you know, marching against the first Iraq war and marching against the Nazis in Berlin. I had no idea what I was doing. I was 20 and was invincible in a certain sense. But yeah, there was sort of like this sort of coming together of what can I do to give to the world and participate in it. And I found myself working at a food cooperative at my second college attempt and working in the produce department and wondering where all this produce came from. I was happy to put it on the shelf and I liked the people I worked with, but yeah, just had a wondering. And somehow I ended up working on a farm. Shortly after I started working there, I drove across the country to California and somebody was like, I wanted time off from college. Somebody was like, try this woofing thing. And I was like, all right. So I got in my car with my then girlfriend and drove across the country and worked on a farm for 8 months. I had no idea what I was getting into. It was terrible. I don't know how I survived it. It really was. But I mean, in all the outer aspects, it was just kind of like this farm was a disaster. I was basically the farm manager and I just showed up. I drove across the country and they had fired their farm manager because he was drunk at 11 in the morning and belligerent to their customers. And somehow I was like the farm manager and I was like, okay, here I go. It's really something to be, but there was also something enriching in that to be like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do what I can do. And I'm going to learn from making mistakes. And I made a lot of mistakes and I continue to really find my way through just trying to live into what's in front of me as best as I can. But yeah, just kind of coming through this experience and getting back to New Jersey and being like, what do I want to do with my life? I had this crazy experience and it was fun, but is like what, I don't know what it means if I continue to follow it, but I decided to and worked on farms for a handful of years and began my own farm and having these experiences of working with other people, mentors, older people, yeah, working with lots of different younger people with questions. I was trying to find my own question though, and find my own way. And one of, yeah, nutrition and health has always been really important. The life of the earth has really always been important to me. I didn't really have those questions as well formed as I do now back then. So it's very kind of gradual. And even now I'm sort of like, do I know what I'm doing or where I'm going to a certain extent, which I feel is healthy in a certain way, as long as I can kind of hold it and carry it well. But yeah, just trying to live into how do I even hold these questions, I think it was a big one. Just sort of every step I take into agriculture, I feel like I learn more and I also see how much there is that we're challenged by, as Walter laid out, and how to address it. And Underneath all of that, there was especially looking back, this real spiritual striving. And Walter, you mentioned these crises. I would say underlying all of our crises are a lack of striving to know and recognize and work with the spiritual world. Very clearly is, and you mentioned some more specifics in your offering, but yeah, this idea that there is something more than what we see and something higher than us that we want to know and we want to work with. And yeah, so over the years, I've really tried to find my own way to explore my own questions. And I think that is probably one of the most important things for anyone, and really what I strive to do in this farmer training activity that I do, and in this distance learning course that I offer, is not, there aren't really any answers that I have to give, which is an interesting thing. I get a lot of people coming to a farmer training being like, biodynamics, I get to learn about the planting calendar and the preparations and other things that, people are interested in, but those are really the top two. And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna do that. And we're gonna learn about plant development. Like, what is a plant? How does it grow? Like these are serious questions that we have to ask. Otherwise, we're going to be nitrogen fertilizing and GMOing because people are asking different questions. And this is, it's also hard to know what one's question is, but one knows that you're working towards something, and there's something in behind these ideas that you want to know more about and have your own living connection to follow your own questions. So we do get to the preparations, we do get to, working with the planting calendar, but we try to build it up so that you can find your own meaning to it, because everyone has their own question, and it's important to know when and how to spray the preparations, and some research that a lot of research that's been done to cycles of the moon and the sun and all of that, but how do you actually assess your own situation at hand so that you can apply some of these tools that we have with us? And so it's sort of seeing this bridge for me, and part of, it's kind of connecting to this sort of, you could say, youth and elder or intergenerational agriculture. And that's just one lens to look at this through, but people who have experience and have done a lot of great work, and many of them are in this room, many, Karin and Delmar and Beth and Gloria and Stephen and Walter and Alex are all mentors in the program, and they all bring a lot to the program themselves. And then there's sort of spaces so that people can ask their own direct questions after working with somebody who has experience and can show them practical activities and can guide them on the land. They have their own experiences, and then have a place to have a conversation about, well, I did that, but what I had this experience, what does it mean? Or did you have that experience? Or when you do, how do you plant your vegetables? Do you do, just even very simple questions get to come out that are people don't know what to do with them or how to explore them. And again, we don't necessarily have answers to them. We might have 5 different ways that people, work with their transplants in the greenhouse, for example. But really what we're trying to build, and Walter, you also touched upon this in the beginning, is really developing human capacities, developing our own capacity to assess our situation and work, to grow, to know the life of the plants and the soil and the animals, and to work in social ways. And one small way that we really work with that, well, we work through just, sensory observation is one of the most basic activities, working through Goethean observation to have this real grounding in the senses and clarified thinking. And you could say Steiner sort of takes that and applies it to our inner life as soul spiritual science, going beyond this physical activity. And we want to sort of marry those two. They sort of work upon each other, this inner life and this outer life. And so we take you could say this idea of imagination that Steiner brings, and try to learn how the plant grows through working with it. And you can work with this in your social life or in other ways, but I've found for me, and everybody has their own entry point, but working with a plant is this kind of ability to have a conversation. And the plant isn't, I mean, I speak English, I speak a little bit of German, but the plant doesn't speak either of those languages, as far as I can tell. It speaks its own language, and each, it's sort of how do we get to know that language that the plant speaks. And I think that is has been one of my questions, is that the life of the earth has a voice, but we can't hear it. Can I be a voice, but more importantly, can I help other people hear it? And I think that is one of the questions that we're all carrying, is we want to know that there's data, and we want to know that, climate's going this way, and there's the economy doing this, and we have these studies, and we want to know what to do with it and how to make moral decisions for our own lives out of this deeper place that we all carry. So yeah, just as an offering, I have, behind my computer screen here, an orchid that is working towards making buds and blooming. And it's just a reminder, especially as I sit here, that life isn't about having answers like the computer or the technical world will tell you. You don't have to know what you're going to do, not even tomorrow morning necessarily. It's good to have a plan and picture what you're trying to go towards, but we're not fixed, and we're not heightened like the world, and there is time. It's accelerating, but as much as we can put our own free will into working towards what we sense is calling us forward, what we brought and what's calling us forward, just taking those steps, having, like the plant puts its leaf after leaf, and maybe someday it will flower and fruit, but just put those leaves out. So yeah, if you do, have the opportunity just to work with a plant in this way, to start that kind of conversation, just try to allow it to impress itself upon you, make a space. And then, maybe a short while later, step away and try to bring up what that plant impressed upon you up in your inner life. It can be an image or a feeling, but whatever comes up, and trying to be objective with it. And then go back to the plant and have this kind of living conversation and see where it grows. It's a bit, Walter, similar to Walter's soil activity, but yeah, just having this conversation space so that we can listen, and we can also learn to speak and participate. Not, I can't say, plant, please grow quicker, or I'd like more fruits. That's not how you would speak to a friend. Why would you speak like that to a plant? But yeah, just as a picture, how do we really work in this conversational way where we're really listening and really speaking to whatever being we're with? I think that's really, the crux of where I'm trying to work from, is trying to create these creative spaces between any being that I may encounter, and to support, this living quality coming out from all beings. And yeah, there's some other, I did a little webinar on just this kind of work with plants, and I'm happy to send that to anybody. If you want to get in contact with me, you can probably get in contact with Frank. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd love to make visible every way to connect and do the work. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Anthony, for sharing. And thank you, Walter. You created a wonderful picture of us walking into what Stefan will invite a little bit around, just, living conversation. So maybe Stefan, I hand it to you to frame there.
So we've all been looking at our screens for a while, so maybe we just close our eyes for a moment. And just listen. sounds in the room, reverberations from the thoughts that we just heard. Maybe we'll find within ourselves a seed that's been planted by our elders and mentors in this community. We can listen and observe what's growing there. And what questions want to bloom. How do we take a stand? How do we transform conflict and challenges into capacities? How do we form new kinds of relationships with plants and animals and also our peers? How do we learn to work creatively, not just with plants and animals, but with each other and with thought? As we observe that plant growing within us, the questions that are blooming, we can also notice that if plants are planted too close together, they don't grow, they don't become abundant. But if they're too far apart, they don't support and protect each other. So let's give each other the space to unfold our questions, to speak and be heard, and to respect the impulses that want to come, and to speak when you know it's your time to speak. I welcome all of your questions.
Stefan, I would like to start with a question that you posed yesterday. In fact, you posed two questions that really kind of stimulated me. And afterwards, it was kind of a flood of thoughts. Is it okay to spend a moment to talk about those two questions and what they elicited in me?
Of course, this is an open space for all of us to discuss.
Okay.
And just practice listening and respecting everyone's space.
Okay. Well, then the first question was, why have I come here? And what is it that I should do? And, you know, I mean, that's a great question. And hopefully it will be answered. I'd say keep that question burning and don't let it burn out, but keep at it, and don't fool yourself with the wrong answer, even if it's easy. But expect a dynamic zigzag pattern in your life because these sorts of things unfold, you know, as you follow your gut level, or whatever you want to color, your heart, your deeper sense of what you really want to do with yourself. You know, expect that it will unfold, and it may only make sense after you look back at it. And then if that doesn't help at all, I just want to ask the question, what are you good at? What are you good at? Because that really helps. If you're going to make a contribution to the world, what are you good at? And if it's okay, I'm going to do the second question, was that, what would you have wanted to know from an older person when you were my age? Right? That was a good question. And I thought back on that one. You know, when I was your age, and if some older person had had tried to tell me what I didn't want to hear, because yeah, somebody said it, we're full of piss and vinegar, I mean, we're really, and we're pretty cocky the earlier we are, about, knowing what who, having a pretty good opinion of what lives in us. And so if I think back of somebody telling me something, it might have been that I would have been irritated or I would have dismissed what they said. But thinking back of what they should have said to me with my weaknesses and my, how would you say, the capacities that I really needed to earn, which I didn't have, I can share with you them. And I hope it doesn't sound irritating. The first thing is, really cultivate relationships with the people around you. They're precious. And love them and value them. And love them for who they really are with all their warts. That's the first thing. And that, I probably, if somebody had told me that, I said, well, I already do that. That's not me. But, the thing is that you can always make that deeper, and then, appreciate what you have and believe in yourself and your core values and what you need to bring into the world, and believe in it for the people that you love. Believe in their core values. That's really important, that you carry them too. And use your ingenuity and your wits and your creativity and keep growing, keep thinking, keep actively learning. That's really important. But you often need to know what you do know and what you don't know. That's something that also I found is that, I often think I know more than I actually do. And I often make judgments that don't nail it, because I'm building on data that's not good, being more scientific about it. And the thing is that you don't want to be cynical. You want to maintain idealism, but you don't want to fool yourself either. And you need to be realistic as well as idealistic, and bring those two things together. I mean, I wish somebody had reaffirmed these things. I probably would have said, oh, I do that already, once again. But I don't always. And the other thing, when I started farming or started working on farms when I was a kid, I wasn't very practical. I was a city kid from Seattle, and nobody taught me how to work. And I'm sure you guys meet plenty of people, you farmers out there, meet plenty of young people coming out there who really don't know how to work. And it's a problem because you have to teach them how to work. And it takes time and it takes energy. And I had to learn how to work, and it was painful. And other people could do it better than me, particularly the kids who've been raised on farms. And, I had to watch them. How did they do stuff? Why were they so much faster than me? And one of the things that was involved in it is they were always thinking ahead. They were always thinking about what the next thing was to do and the best way to do it. They were always thinking practically. And they were really good at it. And they judged each other by how practical they were. They really do. They do that all the time. It's a culture. The farming culture is a practical culture, and people judge each other all the time. How practical are you really? And I wasn't very practical, but I had to learn to be practical. And one of the things was just learning to think ahead, learning to think ahead. And then, it was mentioned yesterday that you need to be stubborn. You need to be tenacious. You need to be a bit pig-headed, because life is going to beat you up. You're a farmer. I mean, Dana was warning you guys yesterday, right? It's not going to be easy if you want to be a farmer. But you are going to probably hit the wall a few times, and you're going to have to learn to adapt too, and modify, and not be disappointed, and not be broken. I mean, I heard Del Delmar's and Carrie's story the other day. Wow, you know, it was really tough what they've been through, but they're still doing it. You know, I mean, it's, you know, so that's also a thing. And then, you know, the balancing of your heart and your head. I think I referred to that already. Learn to complement the male and the female perspective. And if it's at all possible, find yourself, you know, somebody who you can live with, who you know, helps you out, you know, stimulates you, you know, is creative, spiritually creative, you know, who, you know, that's more important than the initial chemistry in a way. You know, it's can they help you and can they hold you accountable? So that's enough from me. But anyway, I think you were asking for it, so you got it.
Yeah.
This is Delmar. I had a question, a comment, and maybe a slight concern or a question for Walter that I'd like him to maybe address quickly. The comment, so I find your work, the potential of your work, Walter, to be completely transformational for agriculture. You know, taking on corn and this sacred indigenous plant that has been abused and grown into this enormous commodity crop worldwide, and taking that on to re-sacralize that plant in a new way, is such beautiful transformational work that I don't know if people here really realize how incredible, what the potential of that is. And I know you probably feel like you have a long way to go with the work, and lots to learn along these ways. But as a sidebar, I also think it's exactly what biodynamics needs right now. I think it needs these big ticket items, if you will, where it draws attention to what biodynamics can bring to the world, and why biodynamics is relevant and superior in the most humble way of bringing change to the world and of agriculture and ourselves and the earth itself. So with that kind of preface background, my concern and question is, this work will begin to get the attention of very big players in the world. You know, the Monsantos, if you will, of the world, the Syngentas, I imagine. What steps have you thought about doing? You said you like thinking ahead, so that your work is protected, that it remains freely available for farmers, and that it is not taken into a realm that can be, you know, taken away from farmers. I'm curious of what your thoughts are on all that. Thanks, Walter.
Yeah, Delmar, that's a really good question, and it's one that's plagued me. Because, well, first off, I was really afraid that nitrogen fixing corn, you know, it exists in Mexico, and that it was going to be patented. There was an effort to patent it out of California University. And that concerned me greatly. And you know, I tried to put all the information on the internet to keep that from happening, because with a patent, it has to be something original. It has to be an invention. And if there's previous knowledge out there, it invalidates the patent. You can't have a patent if somebody else has already discovered it. So a lot of my suffering work has been concerned about trying to keep it from being patented. Then the other thing is that how can we work in association? So I've started working with the Northern Plains Sustainable Agriculture Society, who has a bigger membership base than our group. And they have a farmers breeding club. And we're trying to now form an association, a quality crop association. And in order to use the seed, you have to be a member of the association. So you have to join. There's certain rules. You can't give the seed away. You know, you have to respect the, you know, the breeders who have bred it from that standpoint. So they get some sort of income too, because the problem with small breeders is that they can hardly exist. And one of our objectives is to get a lot of small breeders started. So I'm trying to share the corn with small breeders under contractual relationships. We also are starting the work of plant variety protecting the corn so that it is protected, the inbreds at least are protected. The problem with our corn is that it's mutable. It doesn't want to stay fixed. And that's part of the reason why it does so well under organic conditions. It always has a little bit of tendency to want to adapt. It's not like a fixed product. It's a living creature that is really good at adapting. And so, you know, putting it in a box and patenting it is difficult for these kind of plants that are coming out of our program. They're all the time finagling to adapt and shift a little bit this way and that way. Anyway, so that's a little bit the status that we're at now. It's not totally satisfying, but look, you know, Delmar, if we lose, let's say we lose, and a bunch of companies get it, it's not just one. Will we have one anyway? Because we have better nutritional value, and you know, we have nitrogen fixation, and you know, hey, you know, my objective isn't to be bringing big suitcases full of money with me when I die. I've given up on that one, right? So you know, you know, how do you win? And sometimes when you lose, you win. And you know, the name of our organization is Mandamin, and Mandamin is a legend, and it's a legend about a god who died, but from his body there came corn. You know, so there is a little bit of that understanding in what we're trying to do, is to work with others, try to do partnerships, try to form a new kind of working together that will also enable small people to get started. So I'd really like to be starting, you know, getting people started with breeding. And you know, first off, giving them some seed to work with, and you know, try to adapt it to their environments, do it under a contractual basis, and see where we can go from there.
I'd like to reflect on that for a moment. Are you're I don't know if I'm gathering this correctly, but it's like you're saying that in the journey of just working with the plant, we can even put aside this battle with these powers to be, or are we actively to, you know, protest this? Just wondering where you stand with that. Like, is it's one thing to work with the plant and just to, like you say, increase our relationship with the plant, and we're building soil and we're feeding ourselves. But then when do we protest and push back against this catastrophe that's going on?
You know, the catastrophe is going to get worse, and people are going to get sicker because they're eating food that isn't really feeding them in the way that they should. One of the things that we notice is we have much better nutritional density to our corns. They have much more nutrients in them, more minerals and so on. Now, if you're out in Tiwa country and you're growing the native corn there, you can expect that it's going to be really high quality. Those are really high quality corns. The Pueblo corns are really tasty. I go more for the flour corns. They're really good, and they're really well adapted to that environment. If you're working in an area where you really need to develop a different kind of corn, or you want to do that, then it's a little bit different. But that corn, the Tiwa corn, is going to evolve under your management. It's going to change. And it's going to be different after you grow it for multiple years. And if you spend meditative life, if you do ceremonies with it, if I take the time at the around the equinox, I mean not at the end of the year, excuse me, not the equinox, the word at the end of the year when the sun is at its lowest point, and the holy nights after that, to do meditative work with the corn. And to also, that's a time when you can pray with the corn, and you can also talk about what's needed.
Do you mean the winter solstice?
Yes. That's a time when the world is different, when the spiritual world is close, and there's a listening going on to what humans have to speak. And that's a time when very humbly one can put forward the needs. The plants are in a partnership with us. Every plant that you grow is a partnership, and it reflects the values and the needs and the creativity of the plants and the microbes, because the plants that we grow are actually plant/microbial partnerships. And they shape themselves, and they're creative, and they do wonderful things when we grow them. And they'll give us new things according to what we need. So there's a dialogue between the plant and the human that needs to be exercised very consciously. One has to pay attention to what the plants give, and work with them, and not be afraid to experiment. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Walter. I just wanted to let everyone know Anthony also put some great links in the chat and his contacts, so make sure you check that out. And we have about 4 more minutes before closing, so maybe one more question or so, if anyone has something on their mind.
Yeah, I just wanted to share here in New York, we had a nice, we're having a group of us meet, and really appreciate what you're bringing, Walter and Anthony and Frank and God and everyone organizing. Yeah, just feeling blessed by the wisdom in the room and the intention behind it, and to be a part of such a beautiful dream that's unfolding. Along those lines, today we drew cards with flowers on them, addressing this relationship with the plant. And we're being encouraged to also work with the plant as an archetype in taking it into sleep. So just really interesting to, as articulated by a dear mentor and friend, Dennis Kosek. So just really interesting the synchronicity here, and so I thought maybe I would just share our kind of what we're working on in cultivating this relationship and acknowledging the archetype of the plant and what it has to offer for the human at this time. And the rose cross meditation comes to mind as well.
Hello. I'm wondering if Walter and Anthony, you might have something to say about when one is, has the land before them, or if anyone here has a new farming opportunity ahead, how might one come to what needs to be planted? And maybe for Walter, like, how did you come to corn? If you might have any advice on finding the thing that is needed.
Okay, well, I think Anthony could help a lot on this one, and I've talked a lot, but but I'll tell you that it's sure possible to make mistakes. I don't know if you want to hear that, but when you don't really know, what you should do, you have to try the best thing you can and see how it works. And gosh, I've made so many mistakes with different pieces of land. We had a piece of land that somebody donated to us this year. It was beautiful. They tilled it up. It was the best soil. We were like counting our blessings. We were so happy with it. It was a thistle patch. Now, mind you, we planted corn on it, and the corn, we suffered all year long, or all growing season long. We didn't even want to look at it, because it was struggling and so on. But you know what? Our nitrogen fixing corn went up to 140 bushel, and the other corn, I think the highest yield was 90. And that was a revelation. So the lesson in that is that, okay, you try your best, you try to figure out what makes the most sense, for your situation, but it may not be optimal anyway, because the soil might not be right, or it might be weedy, or something you don't know, but you can learn from it. And then the next time around, it'll be different. And I'm sure there's I'll turn it over to other people to have a go at it.
Yeah, I would say it's a hard thing to know, even if you have known the land for a while. I mean, the longest I've known a piece of land is 8 years, and even at that point, I was just really just starting to get to know it a little bit. And as Walter was saying, I made a lot of mistakes. And it was very forgiving, though. It's a teacher in that way, if we can really approach it. And I sense that's where your question is coming from. Even, it's a different kind of question. It's not what's going to make me money, or what do I like, but what's going to maybe strike some of these different activities. So yeah, there is what's going to nourish my community, what's going to sustain my livelihood, what's going to support the land, what kind of plants am I connected to, and trying to carry all of these questions together and make the mistakes, but just kind of take these next steps. It depends on where you're trying to start, but just starting small so that you have the space to ask the questions too. I mean, I myself wanted to just jump into farming and had a lot of these social and economic tensions, but as much as one can find a way so that you can really nurture your question along within these constructs of society, is that, that's what I would say.
Okay. Yes, this is very rich and great, and I'm so glad that this space is able to be here. So glad, in fact, that after we close this space, if people still feel compelled, to stand in this space, we'll just leave it open. But we will close this space here. And thinking this half-hour lounge gesture we've done, it probably needs to be at the end while everyone's actually warmed up in here. But it's also been helpful for organizing that people could arrive early. So we are also here early tomorrow if you wanted to hop in and see who's also here. And great to hear the work going on in upstate New York. I just want to say, it's like, where's Waldo for me if I see Jen or Carly, and I see you both in the same frame, so got you. Oh yeah. I refrained from asking you to play a song here, but I'm still holding the question. I'll just offer, actually, I wonder if we can hear, we're talking about this practicality. Alex whether you're driving in traffic or not, I wonder if you would be up for offering the practical verse there. And to know that tomorrow, Alex and Stephen and Gloria and the folks at Live Power will be sharing their work tomorrow at the same time. So really looking forward to completing this 3-part harmony. Alex, how are you doing there?
It's a little bit risky because I'll have to bring it out of my heart and soul and my memory. I don't have it before me to read it, so I would prefer if somebody else had the verse to read, that we would do it that way. But if this is the only way and you put your trust in me, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I trust you.
Okay. Here we go. Merging onto Highway 94. Seek the truly practical material life, but seek it so that it does not blind you to the spirit that is active within it. Seek the spirit, but seek it not in passion for the supersensible, out of spiritual egoism. Seek it because you wish to apply it selflessly in practical life, in the material world. Turn to the ancient principle, spirit is never without matter, matter never without spirit, in such a way that you say, we will do all things in the light of the Spirit, and we will seek the Spirit in such a way that it kindles warmth for us in our practical activity.
That was perfect.
Awesome. Okay, there it is. Thank you so much. Didn't skip a beat there. Blessings all for being here. So much gratitude we could make a start. We'll keep the space open. Thank you. Good night for those who are ready to continue in their spaces.
Good night, everyone.
Night.